Hello, Franchesca.
Hi, Becky.
Welcome to our first podcast.
This is exciting.
I know. It's our very first. I don't think we have any subscribers yet.
Nope, not a single one, but we will. By the end of this show, I think we are going to probably be the most popular people in town.
Yes, I'm going to tell Joe Rogan he better watch out. We're coming for him.
That's right.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about who we are and why we think we should have a podcast.
Well, number one, we want everybody to like, share, and subscribe.
Yes.
So how are we going to get that if we don't do a podcast?
Exactly.
And also, I think you and I both know that we have come so far in home care, and we've done so much and had so many experiences that we both think we have a lot to share.
Yeah. So we kind of came up with this idea. We were approached and said, have you guys ever thought about doing a podcast? And we're like, well, what would we talk about? And then we met one day, and then we realized we had so many things that we could talk about.
And we were laughing and
yes,
feeling heartbreak and so many different situations that came to mind.
Yes.
And we just thought if we could share some of these solutions to these struggles that people have.
Yes.
Then it makes it all worth it, right?
Yeah. So let's tell everyone a little bit about us and who we are and all the good stuff. So I am Becky Torrez. I am the owner of BrightStar Care. We've been open in Las Vegas for 12 years now. I cannot believe that. And BrightStar Care is a personal care, home health care agency that goes in and takes care of people in their homes. So, but through doing that, we meet people all over Las Vegas that need help. And so we meet, people that are just starting off on this journey, people that are towards the end of their journey, people that are looking for hospice or rehabilitations or assisted livings. And so we kind of realized that, there's a lot of people that need a lot of help, and we thought we could offer some solutions.
One of the other things that we realized is that that illness and sickness and dementia, Alzheimer's, it's no respect of persons. It can happen to the wealthiest of people and to the poorest of people.
Yeah.
Anybody
is going
to be facing this.
But one of the reasons that I wanted you to do this with me is you've been in this industry far longer than I have, and you are really a go-to in the Las Vegas Valley for people as a resource. So why don't you tell everyone how you got started in this and your background?
Okay. Well, every time I start to think about that question, I always remember I accidentally walked into a skilled nursing facility for a temporary part-time job.
Oh.
And I interviewed, got the job, and was able to start to interact with seniors in nursing homes. And so I had the privilege of getting to know them. Actually, before I even get into that, though, my experience kind of covers the whole gamut of skilled nursing, independent living, assisted living, continuing care communities, and I've also now added home care to my resume.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know you told me stories about, meeting with the senior population, and you did missionary work before you did this.
I did.
You were on sabbatical from doing your missionary work. And then you said you came home and were like, I'm going to get a part-time job.
Yeah.
And then you fell in love with the senior population.
I did. I'd been living in London, came home for a short sabbatical, and decided that I was too young to be on sabbatical. I was 26 years old. And I thought, why would I be on a sabbatical where the church is covering my cost when I'm young and I can go out and get a job? So I took a temporary part-time job in a nursing home. And one of my greatest experiences, which I think I've shared before, is meeting a woman who was deaf and blind and couldn't really communicate because she didn't know how to speak. So no one was able to communicate with her. I want to say she was in her 90s. I don't really remember her age. But what I do remember is the satisfaction of sitting down with her and trying to find a way to communicate. And what I discovered is that she grabbed my hand and had me start spelling words on the palm of her hand.
Oh, wow.
And so it was like she started off with hello, and she did an HELLO, and then the palm goes onto the palm to start a new word.
Oh, wow.
And that day I realized this woman can communicate. And nobody had had the time to sit with her and figure this out. And so we now were having a conversation, and she could share with me her background, her life. And it was as though the clouds opened up, and we, God reached down and touched the situation.
Awesome.
And it was amazing. And just different opportunities to do that, working with students from Occidental College We'd have social work students coming into the community, and they would come in to learn how to communicate with the residents and patients that were there. And they'd help us to take them out on outings. We'd go to restaurants, but they were learning to communicate with seniors as well.
Very good. I love that. So I know that today we're going to talk about doing a little bit of an introduction to senior living. And so when I first started BrightStar, I had this vision that, people would call me up on, during the week and say, my mom is in rehab right now and she's getting discharged in 2 weeks, and we really want to do our research. We want to meet with people and interview them and figure out what our next steps are. And the reality was that I'd get a call at Friday night at 5:00 saying, help, my mom's getting discharged in 2 hours and I live out of state and I don't know what to do. So one of the things that we really, 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 really want to talk about, we're going to do a whole show about it, is planning before you are in that situation. And so this is kind of an introduction to that. So it's a lot easier to have those conversations before you need it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a what if scenario, not this is happening. So,
and it's so much more fun to talk about it when it's a what if,
right?
Rather than when it's a threat,
right? And we take care of people in their homes, so we're going to talk about that. But then there's also times that people, need to move out of their homes, whether it's a financial reason or socialization, or, they want to downsize. Maybe they have a really big home and they just want to downsize and move into a smaller community. But what we see is that when people have to make these decisions without having the time to research it, it almost always ends in disaster.
It's scary too. And the emotions involved, that crisis mode that we all jump into. And then you make decisions without enough information. And when you realize, the dust settles, you've put yourself in a situation that isn't necessarily the best.
Right.
And you've already committed and spent all this money and made all these changes.
Right.
So absolutely, what can we do to be prepared?
Yeah. And I know for us, there's people that are very resistant to having care. I'd say 9 times out of 10 people are resistant to having care. And so, and we know that people are resistant to moving into, no one wants to think about getting older or what comes with that. And the thought of having to, move out of your home that you raised your kids in and that your grandkids visit. And so all those things. But as we've discussed, it's so much easier to do to have those conversations and meet with people when you're not in a crisis mode.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Although I don't understand it sometimes. I think to myself, if somebody wants to take care of me, feed me, clean my house, I am all in.
Right. Me too.
I am not going to fight.
I know, right? I know. I always say moving into an assisted living is like a cruise ship on land.
Right?
Yeah. So I know. So so that's definitely one of our big themes, and not just today, but always is going to be plan. And give yourself the opportunity to interview different companies and go and visit different, places.
And so many of these communities, they do these big events. They have so many different activities going on. They give you tours. They'll invite you for lunch. So it's so the perfect time to get in and get to know a community and to see it in everyday life.
Yeah.
See how the people treat each other. You walk in and you can see how staff treat the residents, and you can see how residents treat one another. You can see how the caregivers respond to needs, and how good the food is, whether a place is clean, how it smells. I always say, the 5 senses. How does it look? How does it smell? How does the food taste? What do you hear in the background? Are people happy? Is there laughter? Is there music? Are there things going on? And then, of course, feel. How do you feel when you walk through the door of a community?
Right.
So, always more fun ahead of time.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the signs that people start noticing of their loved ones, and, kind of like, oh, something's going on with mom or dad. And I know that a lot of our clients have family members that live out of state. And so they'll talk to mom and dad once, twice a week, and they'll have these conversations, and, oh, everything's great. I'm doing great, doing fine. And then, the holidays come around and they go and visit mom, and it's a different reality. So what are some of the things that people should kind of look out for and notice that their loved ones might be going through?
Well, I think if you have the luxury of being present and making time to go visit, and you're actually going to walk into the home and interact with mom or dad, looking to see, of course, to start off, how they look.
Yeah.
Are they clean? Are they fixing their hair? Are they brushing their teeth? Are they wearing clean clothes? How does the house look? Is the house kept up? Mom and dad were always immaculate. Everything was clean. And now you notice that the house is a mess and things are just not getting done. And the food in the refrigerator is expired or it's empty. And you're wondering what mom and dad are eating.
Right.
You notice that the mail is piling up. They're not paying bills, or they just seem even a little confused, or they're starting to have frequent falls, or you're just noticing things are just not right.
Right. So I know, I tell a story, and it was a friend of ours whose mom, he was communicating with her, talking to her, and said everything was great, and she was eating, and he went and visited her, and he realized that she was eating the cat food, thinking it was tuna. And so, it was just it was heartbreaking for him, because he felt like, here I am checking up on my mom and thinking, she's okay. And until he went and saw her, I didn't realize,
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Then you start to feel guilty and
Yes.
the shame, and it's difficult.
Yeah. And so I know, obviously the way things look, going in and, looking in the refrigerator, if they have expired food. As you said, sometimes, we see these people that, every day they get up and, do their hair and makeup and wear these beautiful clothes, and the kids come and visit, and, it's obvious they're not keeping up with their hygiene. They're not changing their clothes. Those are some of the signs. The financial thing is a big one.
And that's, I think, a scary one.
Yeah.
I remember when my grandfather, we had just started caring for my grandfather, and my mom had gone into the house and was trying to help him pay some bills. The light was they'd had the light turned off, the electricity turned off, and we just thought they were fine. But I remember my mom going in, and not only did she find the bills that weren't being paid, but all these donations that they were making. Donation after donation, and people calling them, and they'd grab their credit card. It's really frightening when you don't know what's going on.
I know. We always recommend that people, get on that somebody else is on a bank account, credit card, so they can monitor and see what's going on. I've heard these stories now with AI, and, these people are getting these phone calls, and it's their granddaughter's voice saying, I've been kidnapped, or I've been in an accident, and I need money. And I was listening to a podcast actually recently, and it was a very well-known person, and that was in news forever. And the scam happened to her family, where they almost gave something like $17,000. And they figured it out.
Scary.
But it was that type of thing where, and these are savvy people that almost get caught.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
It's really important that people are noticing the financial aspects and see what's going on as well. And then we also know the transportation.
That's a biggie. And transportation's tough, getting to doctors, going shopping, anything. You need to have a car, and when you can't drive anymore, it's scary. And when you continue to drive and you shouldn't.
Right. Right. And so one of the other things we know is medications. That's a big one. I said I'm 51, and I took a cognitive test the other day. I'm happy to report that I passed it with a 92. I was a little worried.
Good. I refuse to take them.
It's even better. So, even with that, I said I got up in the middle of the night and I went, oh, did I take my medicine tonight? I couldn't remember. And so, here's somebody that's, I think, okay. And so that happens so often where, people, we've seen people that have taken too much medicine or forgotten to take their medicine. And
I did that just this morning.
Yeah.
I grabbed my little bottle and I was like, did I take this yesterday? Did I take it the day before?
I know. So those are some of the things that we really notice and look out for. And unfortunately, when you're not in town, that's when you can, if you're laying eyes on your loved one, you notice things more than you do. And, if you can't be here, having somebody else look in on them, a neighbor, a company, even doing FaceTime,
Agreed.
that type of thing.
Agreed.
But so once somebody is like, oh gosh, mom or dad something's going on, we need some extra help. And so obviously we're the experts in in-home care, because that's what we do. But being in the community, you and I are out all the time in the community, and
Different stories, different situations.
And so,
Absolutely.
we always go and visit these places and we see, different things. So let's start and talk about if somebody wants to do in-home care. Like, what does that look like? What does that mean to have in-home care? Who pays
Right.
for it? All that stuff.
So in-home care, as we know, is generally going to be private pay. Although there are some waivers you can get with Alzheimer's Association, maybe Helping Hands. You might even be able to get something if they've served in the military.
veteran, yeah.
Yeah, so veterans programs. But generally, it's going to be private pay. Generally, you're going to see that some of these situations you're being faced with you're going to need extra help. And so most people are going to ask someone and reach out, do you know anybody that can help us? And then you're going to hopefully get referred to a company that does a good job. So what we do once we get that phone call is try to sort out the details and find out, well, who am I speaking with? First of all, is this a family member? Is it a potential client? Is it a friend? And then ask the whys, what triggered this phone call today?
Yeah, why are you calling us? Why do you think you need it? And yeah.
Because generally people call when they probably needed it last year.
I know, right?
But now they're giving us a call. And so with BrightStar generally, and I think most agencies are going to come out and want to do an assessment and visit and find out in person what's going on, what are the needs, what do things really look like.
Right.
And then once we get that assessment done, develop a plan of care and then identify the right caregiver.
Yeah. And so I think sometimes people think, we get these calls all the time, like, oh, somebody needs to be in my house, 24/7, which I'm not saying there's certainly plenty of people that need that, but the majority of people don't, and
Yeah.
I think tends to be a barrier. It's expensive and, it's intrusive sometimes. And so, a lot of times when I start talking to families, and I know you have this experience too, that it's like, they really only need, 5 or 6 hours a day.
Right.
Or, maybe they need somebody overnight, they're fine during the day, but overnight they're getting up and going to the bathroom and being disoriented and falling. And so.
Yeah, and part of that assessment is looking at the things we just talked about. How cognitively alert are they?
Right.
Is there some dementia involved? Is there sundowners where it starts to get dark and they get very confused and start to wander or get upset and have issues? Or do they just need help getting up in the morning, getting a shower, getting dressed, having breakfast, making sure they're reminded to take their medications, and developing that plan of care that identifies what they need, whether it's 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day, or 24 hours a day.
Right. And so I think that's kind of important to keep in mind too, is that there's some people that have the financial ability and they do not want to leave their home and they're not going to leave their home. And, if they have the ability to stay in their home and get proper care, that's awesome. And that's what we do. And, fortunately for a company like ours, we have all the way, we have caregivers all the way up to nurses. So no matter what level of care that you would need, we can keep you in your home.
Yeah. And then too, when you're trying to stay home, and you're looking for an agency, it's always so important to figure out how they train their caregivers.
Yes.
How are they training? What do they do if something happens in the middle of the night or a caregiver doesn't show up? Is the agency available 24 hours a day?
Right.
Do they have backup?
Right.
What kind of specialized training do they have? Mom has end stage, congestive heart failure.
Right.
And what are they going to do if dad starts to have some exacerbation?
Yeah.
It's like, how well are they trained?
Right.
Who's training them? What kind of oversight is there?
Right. Right.
So it's super important.
It is very important.
Are they
especially-
licensed?
Yes.
Big one.
Yes, that's we're going to do a whole show on this. I'm going to say right now, be very, very careful of who you allow in your home. And, I know it's tempting to go on Craigslist and get somebody, but we have seen that go
Too many times, time and time again.
Yes, not a good outcome usually. So let's say that, family decides, I've seen this before too, that sometimes people are like, I'm lonely. I'm in my house all day and no one's around anymore. The grandkids don't come and visit. And I love to play bingo and I love to salsa
I wanna
dance.
have fun.
Yeah. And
Wanna
so
live life.
if somebody decides that they're ready to move out of their house and go in somewhere, what are the options for senior living?
So we're fortunate that in Nevada, we're such a retirement community. We have so many different options. So we have, one of the options that's just really super easy is the independent living, which is generally going to be 55 plus. It's not going to be a licensed facility, but they're going to have options, usually meal options, housekeeping, transportation, all of those everyday things that we need. And you're going to live in a community where you can socialize.
So that would be kind of like, I know, like a Sienna or a Trilogy.
So you have
or-
your communities like that, but then you also have your independent living communities like Revel or even Red Rock.
Okay.
Some of those types of
So
communities.
that they're could different, okay.
So you have options. So you have
Yeah.
your house is where you have your own home still in a residential community, but you have all of these wonderful amenities. And then you also have your standalone buildings where each one gets their own apartment. And then within the same building, they have like a restaurant.
Okay.
And activities and amenities, exercise gyms, movie theaters, things like that.
Okay, and then tell me about assisted living.
Assisted living is going to be a state licensed community. There's generally going to be at least, it doesn't require a nurse, but most often they're going to have a nurse on staff that can kind of have those expert eyes in-house. But they're going to be able to help you with actual care, personal care. So you have caregivers that can now actually help you in and out of bed, help you with your shower, which isn't something they can do in independent living.
Right.
In independent living, if you have an emergency and they have call lights, all they can do is respond to you in your room and then call 911.
Okay.
In an assisted living, they're going to automatically either start CPR or they may start first aid. They can assist with medications and they can assist with all of those other things while also providing meals, providing activities, transportation, doctor's appointments.
Okay.
The other nice thing is that a lot of times they have doctors that come into the building.
That's very true. That's a very good point. Yeah. And so I know that I think group homes fall under that category, which a group home, for those of you who don't know, is like just a regular residential home that they've converted and that people move in. But I think it falls under the assisted living
It does.
umbrella. I
The
think it has the
same
same
licensing.
regulations. And they're smaller generally, I think less expensive. I mean, not as, it's like living in a home.
It just depends. It can be less expensive, but they can also have some that are more expensive.
Yeah. And,
It's a big range.
Yeah. And
The other
just-
thing they have are HERC homes.
yes.
Which generally it's only going to be two people with a very high acuity.
Right. Yes. Okay, so then let's say assisted living, you need more than assisted living. What's next after that?
So next would be skilled nursing, where you're going to have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, licensed personnel, whether it's registered nurses, licensed nurses, you're going to have certified nursing assistants, a full team that can respond to any medical emergency.
Okay, so, and that's, I think that generally insurance, Medicare will pay for that.
They'll pay for it as long as it's not a chronic illness. If it's something that they're improving, Medicare covers it. But when it becomes a long-term care thing, usually you're responsible for room and board, which Medicaid will often pick up.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so I think that could be we should probably have some people that work in these that could, as guests, that could,
Give you
give
more
us more
information.
information, yeah. And then last, there's memory cares. So what does that look like?
Memory cares are going to be real similar to assisted livings, except that they're secured, and your staff is going to have a more specialized training in Alzheimer's and dementia.
Okay, that's very good.
Which, yeah.
So for us, as I said earlier, you and I go into these places a lot. And obviously, if you walk into one of these places and it's dirty and smelly, and you can tell that it's, in the carpets and the drapes, not just somebody had an accident, but immediately turn around and walk out. That's
Yep.
what I can tell you.
Yep.
If you walk in and you get the ick factor, walk out. But we've also been in places sometimes that look really nice and shiny, and they have cookies out.
You can smell the cookies when you walk in.
and it seems great, but when you start, peeling back the onion, it's like putting lipstick on a pig. So if a family is going out and starting to look at some of these places, what should they look for and what should they ask?
So I always start off with, when are they licensed and what do their surveys look like? So if its surveys don't look good and they're really, really bad, don't even waste your time. But other than that, I would say use your five senses, kind of like what we talked about. When you walk into a building, you're going to, what does it look like? How do you feel when you walk in? Because most communities are going to do basically the same thing: provide food, do housekeeping, provide some care. But how does it feel when you walk in there?
Yeah.
How are people interacting with one another? How is the staff interacting with the residents? How are the staff interacting with one another? Is it clean? And look at the corners. I have people that would walk in when I was in a community, and you'd see their eyes going to the corners, the chairs, the wheelchairs, looking at the call lights, and their little pendants around them. Sometimes there's food caked on them or food caked in the wheelchairs. And really looking at those details, because I personally always think the details are important, because are they going to look at the details with my mom or dad?
Right.
Are they going to look at details with the medications? Are they going to be timely? Is it important to them?
Right. Well, one of the things I always tell people is to interview the staff that works there.
That's a great idea.
I know when I go into my doctor's offices, if every time I go in there, they have a new staff, I always think, what are you guys doing that you have a new staff? And I told you this the other day, but my dentist that I've gone to since I was 7 years old, I think, has had the same office staff, and I'm not kidding you. Other than my mom actually used to work for him, so until they all retired. But
Wow.
I mean, honestly, people he's got such a good staff, and that is such a tribute to him, because it's Dr. Sandquist. Shout out to Dr. Sandquist. But I feel like that's a great thing, is to interview the staff. I mean, I know we have a saying in our office that if you want happy customers, have happy employees.
Yeah.
And so I think interviewing, if every single person, and healthcare just naturally has a lot of turnover in it, it's a hard job. So, but if every single person that works there is brand new, that I would just start, and ask them, say, what's your favorite, you don't have to say, do you like working here? Because, they're probably not going to.
Right. They're not gonna give you their dirty laundry.
Right. But say, what's your favorite thing about working here? Or, if you could change one thing, what would you change? And see what their answer is, you know?
And the same with the residents.
Same with the
What is
residents.
what do you love about being here?
If you could change one thing, what would it be?
Yeah.
And see what their answers are, because I really think that's telling.
I love that. And I love that when you talk to a resident, you can ask them, do you have a favorite caregiver? What is it about them you like?
Yes, that's a really good one. Yeah.
And the food, how's the food?
How's the food?
Because they'll tell you.
The food's a big one, I'll tell you that.
And
yeah.
Food's tough, because if you are taking medications that affect your taste, if the food isn't, you can't see well,
Yeah.
it makes such a difference with how your food tastes.
I know.
So
So I feel like we did a really good job of covering options on senior living, and what that looks like, and covered the
So-
gamut on that.
yeah, and just, touching the surface. There's so
Yeah.
much more. There's no way to really get a feel for it without you going there personally.
Yes.
And we, can't underestimate the value of going into a community and feeling it
Yes.
for yourself.
Yes. And I mean, we'll share in the next, we're going to have, in the next couple months, we're going to have different topics. I know we're going to talk about legal issues, and hopefully get an elder law attorney in here.
Tell different stories,
Yes.
some real stories, things that have really happened, and how we
Yes.
can and how you can handle those when you start to face tough situations. Somebody else has already gone through it. So what can we learn from them, and what can we share?
Yeah. I know we talked about talking about hospice and what that looks like. Planning ahead of time for different things that come up, planning.
Yeah,
your-
Alzheimer's.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Alzheimer's.
And dementia,
Yes.
those difficult behaviors.
Yes.
Family conflict.
Yes. And then I know that we have guides that we've put together on, you're calling, to figure out what kind of care you need, questions that you should be asking, what you should be looking for, all those different things. So, we want everyone to like, subscribe, and share. It's our first podcast, but we're really looking forward to doing a lot more of these. And if anyone has any topics that they're like, oh, I would, really like to learn more about that, or same thing as if anyone, wants to be a guest, and they, we know a lot of people in the senior community that,
That have so much to offer.
Yes.
People that have been there, done it,
Yes.
experienced it.
And we really, one thing I love about Las Vegas is we have great community partners, and, we have really aligned ourselves with people that we trust and that we like, and that we would, refer our loved ones to, which I think is the biggest test that we can say.
I think that's huge.
Yes.
I think it's huge.
So
So this is exciting.
I know, I like it.
I can't wait to tell more stories and have more fun.
Yes.
There might be a few tears along the way.
Yes.
But that's real life, and that's what we deal with every day.
Yes. Well, thanks, Francesca. I
Thank
love our first
you.
podcast.
Yay.
Yeah.
Have a great day, everybody.
Yes.
And we'll see you at our next podcast, BrightStar Care Connections.
Yes.